Hey guys, coming at you today with Christmas Cookie Part 2. I figured out a keto thumbprint cookie and a keto Italian butter cookie. So let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, thanks for joining me. My name's Alycia and I'm a sous chef with a sweet tooth. And here we make delicious pastries, many from my time as a pastry chef. And my goal is to make the best keto desserts possible. So if you enjoy these recipes, please consider hitting the subscribe button down there, giving me a thumbs up, leaving me a comment. It all helps my channel grow and to bring you new keto desserts every Saturday. Today, two delicious and traditional Christmas cookies. Both these recipes are super simple. The hardest part is that we have to make keto jam. They do have sugar-free options at the grocery store. I just prefer to make my own. So I'm gonna make raspberry jam today, and it is super easy. I'm gonna make a big batch today just because I might be testing some protein-sparing bread, and I would love to try a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I don't have any jelly. So we're gonna make an 8-ounce batch of raspberry jam. You can use fresh or frozen berries for this. Ooh, big chunk. That's too much. There you go, 8 ounces. If I had fresh lemon juice, I'd probably put a little lemon juice in here, but it's not crucial. And to that, we're just gonna add 3/4 of a cup of allulose. It's 120 grams. And I'm just gonna put a tiny bit of water in the bottom just to get things going. But because they're frozen, they're gonna have a lot of moisture in them already. I'm gonna turn this on medium, but this can be done with the Lakanto monk fruit erythritol or just straight erythritol, but it will crystallize. If you saw my community page with the pictures of the thumbprint cookies, that was made with a monk fruit jam because I wanted to try it and see what happened. And like I thought, it crystallized, which makes it just kind of look a little weird. So I prefer the allulose version. I actually made jam in my biscuit recipe. I'll link that up there for you. If you want to go check out that video, this would be delicious on some biscuits too. I always say if you're gonna make something, you might as well make a big batch of it because you'll use it for something else. Break that up as much as you can. There we go. And believe it or not, you do not need any kind of thickener in jam. When I make it at work with regular sugar, I don't put anything extra in it, no gelatin or chia seeds or xanthan gum or anything like that. You just gotta cook it down until it's a thick consistency, and it'll thicken just with the pectin from the fruit. So we're just gonna let that bubble away, stirring every so often. It is starting to get jammy already. Did not take long at all. I believe I also made raspberry jam in my raspberry white chocolate cheesecake. My Cheesecake Factory knockoff. I'll link that up there for you. This is pretty close. You can see it's getting real thick in there. I have a wide bowl to put it into to get it into the fridge because the more surface area, the more spread out the jam is, the faster it's gonna chill. And you want this jelly-like before you put it into your thumbprint cookies. You can strain this too if you want. If you don't like seeds, which I don't really like seeds, but I think they'll look pretty in the cookie. I think we're just about done here. See if there's actually a temperature on this. We're at 190, which I feel like that is a specific number I've used before. I didn't go back and look at any of my other jam videos. I'm sure there actually is a specific temperature for jam. I just go by eye usually. It looks pretty jammy. Not a lot of water left. Very syrupy. That looks good. I need my pot holder now though. Do I have one? Oh, I got one behind me. Okay, so we're gonna pour this into a bowl. Heat proof, heat safe. I'm gonna keep the spatula in it and keep stirring it. That way it cools down faster because you know the outside will get cold or cooler before the middle. So if you keep stirring it, it'll cool down quicker. Well, that's chilling for a little bit at room temperature. We're gonna get on to the butter cookies. We're done with this guy. I have nowhere to put this though. My kitchen's a mess from recipe testing. I looked up a couple different recipes and I tried a couple different things for this. It took maybe like 4 or 5 tests to get like a nice crispy outside, buttery, kind of soft inside. And the one site I read, it said, make sure you have good butter because it's the forefront of this cookie. So I went and bought Kerrygold, which I would love to buy this all the time and bake with it all the time because it is delicious, but I go through sometimes 3 pounds of butter a week. So for me, that's not very cost effective, but for certain recipes, I think it could make a difference. So we're using 1 stick of Kerrygold. You can easily double this recipe. I did last night. Make sure you get all the butter off. Make sure it's room temperature and pretty darn soft. This will make it go much faster. And I already measured out 1/3 of a cup. Well, I measured it at 66 grams. But if you want to measure it without weighing, 1/3 of a cup of granular monk fruit erythritol blend. But you can use straight erythritol. I think because there's not a lot of ingredients in this, even the cooling effect comes through a little bit in this cookie with the monk fruit erythritol blend. So we're gonna whip this for 8 minutes. But before we do that, talk about our dry ingredients. Not very many because you want a nice buttery cookie. So you want the butter to be like the prominent ingredient in this. So I only use 23 grams of whey protein isolate. And yes, I tried it with vanilla pea protein. It turned out okay. I don't like the flavor of pea protein, but it does work. And I did do it with all egg white protein as a test, and it turned out okay as well. They're not the best, but if you cannot have whey, which whey protein isolate is lactose free. So if you just have a problem with lactose, then you can have this. There's also just 1 tablespoon or 7 grams of coconut flour in here. The whey protein isolate, 23 grams, I figured it at about 4.5 tablespoons. So scooping it out of there with the measuring spoon and scraping it off. 4.5 tablespoons. 2 tablespoons or 16 grams of egg white protein. That gives this cookie a little crunch on the outside. And then just a tiny bit of xanthan gum to make sure the cookie does not crumble and stays together, because we are going to be dipping these in some chocolate and we want them nice and sturdy so that we can dip them. So that's our dry ingredients. And the only other thing is a little bit of vanilla extract and 2 egg yolks, because it gives it like a richer flavor. The original would be 1 egg yolk, but when you add coconut flour into recipes, if you don't add a little bit extra fat or an egg, it tends to be dry. So we added an extra egg yolk. So let's get this beating. Enough talking. Flinging butter already. After you first start it, get it all nice and scraped down in there. That way all the sugar gets incorporated. I already have my oven on at 325, but you don't really need it on. This has to chill for 30 minutes. You can turn it on like halfway through the chilling time. Okay, it has been whipping for 8 minutes on medium high. You want it super light and fluffy. Now we gotta sift our dry ingredients and whisk them together. That egg white protein, man. I've been working with it a lot lately. It likes to stick to everything and anything. It makes a mess. My kitchen has been just a constant mess this weekend. Give it a shake so you don't get it everywhere. Okay, whisk together. We just want to make sure that our xanthan gum is like evenly distributed in the dry ingredients so you don't end up with like a clump of xanthan gum anywhere. I just took my eggs out of the warm water they were soaking in. I got a bowl to catch my egg whites. You can freeze them. I looked it up online for like how long. I am gonna freeze them. I'm just not sure how they're gonna act in dessert recipes once they're frozen. So, I don't know, I might do 1 or 2 tests with the frozen ones. And if they don't work the same as the other tests I've done for recipes, I might just, have my fiance just use them in breakfast or something. This just gives a richer flavor. I also read on one of the sites you could use 1 egg yolk. It said something about like higher humidity places or something like that. I don't know. Baking is a crazy science. There's so much to learn. Even I don't know everything. So Google is always your friend. I use it all the time. Our 2 egg yolks are in there. You gotta beat those in. Give it a couple scrape downs. We got egg yolk all up on the edge. Then we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract to this. You would add a little bit of salt if you're using unsalted butter. Okay, once that's all incorporated, add in all your dry ingredients. Try not to spill them. The egg white protein stay in your bowl, so try to get as much out as you can. And just beat this until it's like the consistency of a stiff buttercream. You don't want it to be a ball of dough because you gotta pipe these cookies into pretty shapes. Too stiff, you ain't gonna be able to pipe it. One more beat up. Hey, there's not a lot of ingredients. You gotta make sure that they're all really well combined. Otherwise, if you have a pocket of all butter, your cookies are just gonna melt away. So it's a delicate balance between your dry ingredients and butter. I usually give it a little mix with my hand too after I get like the paddle all cleaned off, just in case there was some parts on the paddle that didn't get some dry ingredients in there. It's like a very thick buttercream frosting. Now we gotta pipe our Italian butter cookies. There are a couple different options. I'll have everything listed that I found kind of online in my blog post. But this is an Etico, which I'm not sure if that's how you even say it, an 867. There's a couple different numbers that you can use. They're even wider tip than this. This is just something I got in my pastry kit in college, so I had it on hand. This one I specifically bought. This is the tip that you can make those rose cupcakes, if you ever saw that, where it's in like the shape of a dress. I made one of those for somebody, so I bought this one. It's a Wilton 1M tip. These are pretty for just round like rose cookies almost. It's really nice. And then I just used a Wilton 2D also, which is good for a couple different ones. So I'm gonna show you the 1M and the 867 today. The biggest thing with this is you need a stiff pastry bag, or if you're gonna use a Ziploc, use like a double layered freezer bag, because this is still pretty stiff. And like I tried to use my blue piping bags and they have too much stretch to them. They were not working and the tip was popping out. So I just get the disposable ones, but I clean them several times before I throw them out. Same thing with the parchment paper. I used this yesterday to bake Italian butter cookies on. There was just a little excess butter, so I flipped it over and I got rid of whatever butter was on the pan. You don't want any extra butter. You also don't want to use a silk pat or a greased cookie sheet because it'll make them spread too much. So I'm gonna put a little bit in this one because I like that tip the best for piping. So I'm just gonna put a scoop in here. For these, I just put the bag over my hand. You can also put it into a glass and fill it. But because it's such little amount of dough, I feel like this is pretty easy to do. You can pipe these pretty close together. They don't spread or puff up too much. There's no baking powder or anything in these. So you should be able to get all cookies on one sheet. If you use this tip, you probably are only gonna get 18 cookies. If you use a combination, you might get 22-ish. It all depends on how big you make your cookies too. So for this tip, I like it because you can make the roses like that, and then you can sandwich them together and make a cookie. You gotta try to get them even size though. Even I'm not very good at it if you want to do sandwich cookies. I'm gonna do some of those. Try to like end it real nice. I did see a tip of having like a bowl of water to like brush off like the end tip and to like kind of like smush it down a little bit. But with this dough, I didn't see it necessary to do that. There's a bunch of different designs you can do too. So I'm going to try this design with this one too. It's the S one. You just want to make sure you have enough dough in it, because otherwise if you don't give enough pressure and put out enough of the dough, it ends up being too like flat of a cookie. So you just want to make sure you put enough dough into the cookie. Because with this tip, with the thinner lines and the smaller opening, you tend to make really small cookies. They end up flattening out and they're not as nice. Another one you can do with this one, which I'm not too fond of, you can do like a rosette kind of thing. Like that. That's that tip. I really just like it for this design here. And when you get it like that, use your fingers, squeeze it down. Or if you have a bench scraper or something, you can use that also. Here's my favorite ones, is like, it looks like a Milano cookie. These ones. The hardest part though is keeping even pressure and pulling evenly to get them all to look the same. See what I mean? This one uses a lot more dough than that one does. So that's one of my favorite ones. And then my other favorite one with this is like the Starburst look, which I'll probably do the rest in those. Those ones are pretty. And when they bake up, they look really pretty too. You can also do the S ones in this, if I can get 2 out of here. And then what I usually do to like get all of it out is I like twist it and push it as I'm like piping. Finish it. Yeah. There we go. Not the prettiest, but at least I used all of the dough, or at least as most as I could. There's nothing in there. So I did what I could. So we got 18. So that's what I figured for if you use this tip. If you use a smaller tip that has like a smaller opening, you'll get like 22 cookies. But this has to freeze for 30 minutes. I have a test that we can bake right now. Let me get those. So these I froze last night before I went to bed. I pulled them out this morning at like 6:30ish and had them in the refrigerator defrosting. Now I'm not sure if they're too frozen to bake. It's been 4 hours in the refrigerator. So we're gonna try to bake these. I'm gonna put them on a little bit bigger of a sheet tray. If you freeze them like this, you can just throw them into a Ziploc bag and have them in your freezer ready to go. But when you pull them out, you gotta put them onto a sheet tray with parchment paper to have them ready to bake. So I have another piece of parchment paper from yesterday. I did just a little bit of testing over the weekend. I just want to get the excess butter off of the parchment paper. They seem pretty solid. So these ones I did with all of that one tip. I got 18 out of that. They're already softening, so get these in. Okay, these only bake for 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm gonna do 5 minutes, turn them in 6, and I'm gonna chuck them. Now I'm popping these into the freezer. Okay, these were the ones that were frozen overnight. They baked up, they took 1 more minute longer, but you want them nice and golden. Yes, there's a bunch of butter pooling, just like the other cookies, but it soaks back into the cookie, I promise. And don't touch these until they're solid, because when they're hot, they are soft. But the egg white protein, when it cools, it crisps up the outside of the cookie. If you want them even crispier, you can take them further than this. But traditional butter cookies are just a little golden brown around the edges. So we're gonna let these cool, and we'll be back to start the thumbprint cookies. And of course it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't mess up something. And I was doing testing at 325 for the butter cookies, and then I was testing at 350. And 350 definitely is better. It gets like a crispier outside. So I bumped it up to 350, and I'm going to be putting my batch of cookies that I made today into the oven. While those are baking, we're going to get on to the thumbprint cookies. Our jam is pretty much good to go. So this is a very similar recipe. The only difference is you're adding a little bit more dry ingredients because you want more of a stiff cookie. This one is very similar to my peanut butter blossoms in my previous Christmas cookie video. I'll link those up there for you if you haven't seen those. You want a little bit chew to them, so there's a little bit of gelatin, and then the xanthan gum helps with that and helps to keep it together also. And then there's no egg white protein because we don't want this really crispy. So just 40 grams of whey protein isolate. That is 7 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons of coconut flour, or 15 grams, half tablespoon of gelatin, and a half teaspoon of xanthan gum. And that's it. So we're gonna sift and whisk, and then we're gonna beat this for the same amount of time. 1 stick of butter, 1/3 of a cup, or 66 grams of a classic granular sweetener. You can use any one you prefer. But we're just gonna get this beat up until it's super light and fluffy. Okay, so I think my oven lied to me. I really should have a thermometer inside my oven. That makes sure that your oven is running at the right temperature. But a lot of times when you preheat your oven, even if it goes off and says it's at the right temperature, it usually needs another like 10 minutes to kind of regulate the temperature in the oven. I've heard that before and I didn't even think about it. But these took 14 minutes, which doesn't make any sense. You should have been less time than the other ones that were baked at 325. So, bottom line, 350, just keep an eye on them. You want them nice and golden brown on the bottoms and coming up the edges. Okay, I'm all nice and whipped up in here. Now I know not everybody has a stand mixer. If you use a hand mixer, just really try your best not to skip this step, because our sweeteners don't dissolve like regular sugar. Like most cookie recipes, if you read a recipe, it says whip the butter and sugar for 2 to 3 minutes until light and fluffy. Ours needs more help. Like if you ever bit into a keto baked good, like especially brownies, I've made brownie mixes and other people's brownies, and even I didn't whip some brownies enough that when I bit into it, you can chew the crystals of sugar. And that is like the most unappetizing thing to me, I think. You just gotta whip the butter and sweetener as much as you can, or the eggs and sweetener, whatever the recipe says. So just don't skip that step if you're using a hand mixer. Your arm might feel like it's gonna fall off, but it'll all be worth it. So once that's all whipped up, you just add 1 egg yolk for this one. Keep that in, give it a couple scrape downs. We're gonna put in a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Once you're all mixed up, you're gonna add in all your dry ingredients. This dough should be quite a bit stiffer than the last dough. Also, because there's more coconut flour, it'll take a minute to get thick because coconut flour takes a couple minutes to get absorbed. Okay. No need to chill this dough. You might just want to let it sit for a minute while you get all your stuff together. I got to reduce the temperature of my oven, 325. That's why I got all mixed up with these recipes. It already got like stiffer, the coconut flour absorbing. Now we can scoop it and roll it, Julio. You do need some sweetener to roll these into. You can also, I've seen the recipes where you have like chopped pecans or chopped almonds to roll them in. That'd be awesome too. I just try to keep stuff nut free. I'm probably gonna be bringing some of these over for Christmas, so I wanna make sure everything is nut free. Okay, time to scoop it. I'm using my smallest scoop. I'm gonna try to get 16 out of here. They are a little bit sticky, but nothing you can't handle. Feel free to make these completely customizable, whatever you wanna do. You can do any kind of jam. You can flavor it however you want. Like, that raspberry jam would be delicious with some lemon or orange zest in it, or some kind of booze in it if you want. I just like to get them all scooped first, and then I roll them in sweetener. Got 16 this time. Kept getting like 17 and a half. 16 is a good number. I hate having uneven numbers of cookies. A couple of them a little bit bigger. Don't want to waste the dough. Oh, before I forget, I'm gonna reduce my temperature to 325. Okay, now I measured this out to 2 tablespoons. I'm gonna see if it's enough to roll them all because I haven't measured really. I just add some, and if I need more, I get more. So I'll let you know, but I'm just gonna roll all these in sugar. I'm not gonna subject you to my horrible rolling skills. Okay, all our cookies are rolled. 2 tablespoons of granular sweetener was enough. I realized I don't think I've ever actually made thumbprint cookies. You do not want to really do a big thumbprint in the cookie. I didn't realize that. I'm like, oh, thumbprint, make a big thumbprint. Yeah, nope. You just want to do a little guy in the middle because they spread out, and if you put the indent too big, it spreads out too much. And I actually found out that baking these like right away is actually the best texture you get. If they're from the refrigerator, they actually don't get the best texture on them. So this is a really fast cookie. We just gotta fill them all now with our jam, which I kept in the refrigerator till the last second. Now, you cannot tell me that is not the prettiest color jam. And it's keto. Like, I don't understand why there isn't a jam on the market that is sweetened with allulose. And it makes like best jelly. It's so pretty. I'm gonna be using this in my wedding cake. It's gonna be so pretty in my cake. Can't wait to start experimenting for it. Okay, now the recipe said a 1/2 teaspoon. So that's what we do. Right in the middle. Like little jewels. You only need about 1/4 cup of jam for all of your cookies, if that. So you're gonna have a bunch left. Okay, these guys are gonna bake 13 to 15 minutes. I'm gonna spin them halfway through. They look so pretty already. You want them just golden brown. This also took 1 extra minute, so I'll put 13 to 16 minutes in the recipe down below. Okay, our last 3 cookies are out of the oven. Look at all of them. I haven't even mentioned the best part about these cookies is the macros. These Italian butter cookies with nothing on them, this whole batch, 3 grams of net carbs. Pretty friggin' low. So 18 cookies, 3 grams of net carbs. So it is 0.16 per cookie. If you want to just round it up to 0.5, if you put like 2 of the bigger ones together, they're gonna be a little bit more, you know? but pretty crazy how low those are. For the raspberry ones, I figured out if I used 3 ounces of raspberries, which I think is what it comes out to when using like a half teaspoon in each. Whole batch for the raspberry is 9 grams of net carbs. So for one cookie, it's 0.75. So it's pretty low. It's actually even lower with strawberries, which I thought strawberries were higher in carbs than raspberries. Turns out they're not. So if you do strawberry jam in your Thumbprint cookies, they're only 0.6 per cookie. So pretty low carb and delicious. Okay, so the options here are pretty much endless. I have a little bit of a peppermint ganache. It's kind of thinner than a ganache now because it was a whipped ganache from my Swiss roll. Link that up there if you haven't seen that one. But I whipped up ganache for one of my tests, but I keep it in the fridge and I reheated it and it kind of broke. So I just kept adding a little bit of cream at a time until it came back together, and I used it to test the filling on some of the test Italian butter cookies. So now that there's a lot of heavy cream in there, it's a little bit thinner. I'm gonna make a new ganache, which I just found these. They had them on Thrive Market and I found them at Walmart, I believe. So I just have 2 ounces of heavy cream here. I'm gonna throw it in the microwave just to get it steamy. Only 2 ounces of cream took about 35 seconds in my microwave. So I'm gonna add same amount of the white chocolate chips, so 56 grams. Now I've never done this with these chocolates, so you never know how they're gonna melt on you. So just keep that in mind. We might have to adjust here. I have my cream standing by in case this doesn't work. You want it all submerged in the cream. You want to let that sit for a while. So let that chill for now. I'm going to temper some dark chocolate. I'm going to pop this in. I always do 50% power on chocolate, no matter what. And I do 30-second intervals and stir every once in a while to make sure you're not burning the chocolate anywhere. If you want a very detailed video on tempering chocolate and a blog post, check out my hot cocoa bombs that I did for last year's Christmas gifts. That was insane. Never do that again. I'm also going to add a little bit of coconut oil just to help it smooth out and to melt better. You can also use, a lot of people use cocoa butter. Do that also. Just cocoa butter takes a lot longer to melt. We're almost there on the chocolate. We can probably give our ganache a stir now. We gotta let this cool for a while to get it down to like room temperature so that it's gonna be able to be piped inside of these guys. I don't have my thermometer. We're at 93. So if all this melts, we wouldn't have to temper it because these chips would temper it already. It brings it down to 80. I think it needs a little bit more coconut oil. You can see like how thick it is. It's not very like flowy. So that means you need to add a little bit more coconut oil to it. A little bit at a time. I have measurements in a lot of different videos because I've actually measured it out before, but when I do this, I usually don't measure. So we're just dipping some cookies here. See, it's a lot more flowy, tiny bit more, and most of the chips are melted. Now to decorate, there are a lot of different options. I moved my other cookies way far away because I'm going to be doing pistachios on some of these, and I didn't want to contaminate any of the other cookies with nuts. No EpiPens used on Christmas, please. I'd feel like so horrible if like one of my things caused that. Ugh, scary stuff. We're at 88, which is pretty much where we want to be. Start dipping. Now you're like nice and flowy. Okay. These guys are a little bit too big and thick to be sandwich cookies, I think. So we're gonna dip these guys halfway in chocolate. And then I got some keto sprinkles. Probably should chop up some nuts. Surprisingly, the ones at Walmart did not have any bad oils on them. Just dry roasted pistachios and sea salt, so I was excited about that. You can also obviously use your food processor for this if you're gonna do a bunch of them. They aren't the easiest nut to chop. Since that really didn't dip enough, you can always like kind of tilt your bowl. There you go. You get a bunch on there. Just like dunk it and it'll like pull off the excess. There you go. Go with pistachios. Yeah, it's festive. Yay. Wish we had some prettier sprinkle options for Christmas. I think those are my favorite ones. No contaminating my sprinkles with nuts. You can sandwich and dunk too. And dunk half of it in chocolate. Yeah, it's fancy. You can obviously sprinkle any nuts you want on here. The options are endless on these guys. Have fun with it. Make whatever you want. Hopefully it'll set up. We might need to add more chocolate to it. Sometimes white chocolate is just a pain in the butt like that. Ooh, maybe we can just add some of this to it. The white isn't really a pretty like decoration either. Like it's like kind of like opaque colored. It's kind of weird looking. There, that starts to make it thicker. It's a little bit better color. Now it looks like hot chocolate. Again, this could make your stuff seize on you, so don't be surprised if my stuff gets all weird looking. Chocolate can only take like a certain amount of liquid. A fine line that keeps it from seizing. I was just gonna melt the peppermint chips, but I had a feeling that was gonna be a pain in the butt too, because white chocolate melting is a pain in the butt. Okay, I think we got it. We just gotta wait until it's like thick enough to spread on our cookies. Get my mini offset. See it got thick there? Let's spread it. Want a little bit in the middle. Then you can sandwich it like a Milano cookie. It looks so good. You gotta let that harden. These are like, they are nice and crispy on the outside, and then they're like soft and buttery on the inside. Super good. Looks good. We gotta let all these harden now. And then I'll be plating them all up and giving them a taste for you guys. See you back here. We got 2 delicious plates of cookies. So excited. Oh, they look so pretty. This looks like jewels on top. Shimmery from the sugar on the outside. They are super buttery and tart. Raspberry jam on top. Sweetness level of your jam is completely up to you. Taste as you go. If you think you need more sweetener in it, go right ahead. The raspberry is so good in there. I want to eat the whole thing. I'm not gonna. No one would say those are keto. They would never know. It's so good. There's no like crystal sugar inside the cookie. It's just like crispy on the outside of the cookie. So good. And these guys, they're so pretty. They look like a picture. They look exactly like the Italian cookies online that I was researching before making these. They look so spot on. I'm so excited to have these. And for you guys to try them. I don't know if the chocolate's completely set, but I couldn't wait any longer. And the chocolate's not completely set, but it's like pillowy inside. But they're like that melt in your mouth buttery texture. So good. I've been snacking on these for like 2 days. So delicious. I hope you guys enjoy this second installment of Keto Christmas cookies. If you've made any of my other recipes, you have pretty much everything on hand because I try not to vary my recipes too much. That way you don't have to buy a lot of extra ingredients, just the ones that I use over and over again. Most of my recipes contain those ingredients, so I hope you guys are able to make this for your Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Let me know in the comments below how everyone enjoyed them. You guys can tag me on Instagram at Keto Upgrade Chef with all your delicious keto baked goods that you make. I would love to see them. Don't forget to check out my Amazon links and the blog link to the full recipe in the description box below. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And as always, I'll be back with many more keto dessert recipes. Bye guys.